We'll call the meeting to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Everybody's seen the agenda. Is there any additions or corrections? If not, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Sorry, just one small change. Item number 6 on the agenda is a holdover from last week. It can be crossed out.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Yep. All right.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with that correction.
I'll second it.
Any more discussion? If not, we'll proceed with a roll call.
District 1.
Yes.
District 2.
Yes.
3.
Yes.
4.
Yes.
And District 5.
Yes.
Thank you.
Public comment. Is anybody would like to make a public comment? Doesn't look like we have anybody new in. So, consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Is there any more discussion? I assume the Tyler Hayden is just to make up for that they're short-staffed on the deputies.
Yeah, we're short-staffed at the moment, and so the 3 are temporary employees to fill in on shifts, just to
On shift, Tyler and Isaiah and Kendra.
Yep.
Okay.
So keep us from burning out our others on overtime. So
Yep.
too badly.
All right. If there's no other further discussion, we'll proceed with roll call.
District 1.
Yes.
District 2.
Yes.
District 3.
Yes.
District 4.
Yes.
District 5.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we'll move on to action items. Action item number 1, consider approving the award CARES Act business grants to the EDA recommended round 3 recipients, and also to include allocate an additional $9,291.36 to provide funding for all eligible grant applications. And I see Allison's on. Would you like to bring us up to speed on this, Allison?
Sure. Good morning or good afternoon, commissioners. So the grant officially closed last Friday, and we had an EDA meeting this morning. With all of the eligible applications that we got in, we were $9,291.36 over the initial allocation. So you guys remember you allocated $1,130,000. La Crescent Township also rolled up some funds to the county. That was $17,875. And if you choose to allocate that additional $9,291.36, the total payout for grants will be $1,157,166.36. Total, we received 251 applications. And if all eligible applications are awarded, we will be awarding 241 applications total. And of course, some have already been paid out in other rounds. So in the very final round, we got 53 applications, and of those, 51 we determined are eligible. Does anyone have any questions?
I guess I'm just curious, Allison, did we, in the process, anger anybody?
No, everyone has been very pleased. We've gotten really good feedback from those who have been awarded. We did have a couple applicants that weren't eligible, Most of them were either their business wasn't in the county or they applied twice and they were very understanding as to why they weren't getting awarded. And then we did just have a couple applicants that weren't eligible. But no one seemed upset when I discussed with them why or why not they were eligible. So yeah, overall, I would say everyone is pleased.
Good. Thank you.
Good job, Allison.
Thank you.
Yep. You were well organized and you helped people with their questions, and that's appreciative. I did get a couple of thank yous from constituents, and it was very helpful and needy, and they appreciated what we did. So that was nice to see. But
Yeah, just a note on that, the funding, the $9,291. Essentially, we can take some of the money that we've received from townships and slide that over, and that's how I propose covering that gap.
yeah, I think that would be a good use of the money to slide that over, and then as we'll probably get some more township money in,
Yep.
and then that way we could use it for our other half or so. So
Yeah, before we go into the next action items, I'll bring up the CARES Act money spreadsheets and stuff and share that, but just
Yeah.
wanted to cover that on this one real quick.
I did see a question from Eric on somewhere about the school allocations.
yeah,
I'll go into all that next.
Yeah, that's coming up next. Yep. So, action item number 1, we need to approve round 3 and the additional 92, 91, 36 to finish it out. So, is there a motion to do that?
I would move to do that.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Greg seconds it. Any other discussion?
I would just add that Eric and I were at the EDA meeting this morning. I asked questions on, I think, about 3 or 4 different allocations. Allison explained them thoroughly, and so I think there's really no issue here. And to go forward, I think is a good idea.
Yep, I agree.
Ready?
Being there's no further discussion, we'll have roll call.
District 1,
Yes.
District 2,
Yes.
District 3,
Yes.
District 4,
Yes.
and District 5.
Yes.
All right, passed.
Thank
Okay.
you, commissioners.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Allison. Action item number 2, the 45705 CARES Act funds for public schools.
Yep. All right, yeah, so I'm going to kind of back up and show a broad brush picture of CARES Act stuff here first. I was going to send out a couple spreadsheets yesterday, but the lull I thought we'd have in between voting and counting absentee ballots didn't occur until about midnight. So, 1 second, let me share my screen here and show a couple things. First thing I'm going to show is just to give you an update, share screen, come on. Okay, here it is. All right, so this is the spreadsheet of this, all the CARES Act money. And so as you can see in the second column here, this is the money that was allocated from the state for the county and then for each of the cities and townships. And so what you see on there is the date each of those entities received their money. And in the case of Hoka Township, Spring Grove, Union Township, and Yucatan Township, those 4 townships did not proactively request the funding from the state and receive it. So that money is out of play. The rest of the townships and cities and counties did receive their money, and so there was $3.27 million of CARES Act money that came into the county to the cities and townships. At this point, we have had Crooked Creek transferred their entire amount to the county. Jefferson Township's money came directly to the county, and they did not want it. They proactively asked us to keep it. La Crescent Township has transferred $17,875 to the county after keeping some for their expenses. Based on comments and discussions with the townships, this is roughly what I project that we will continue to get in from the townships. Right now, I haven't projected any in from the cities. I think most of them have used up their funding.
Yeah, you won't see nothing from the city.
And so I'm not expecting any there. Some of these are kind of half of their funds, or like in the case of Brownsville Township, that's what they were expecting to be transferred to us. So that's, from a budgeting perspective, that's where we're at. We have the county's original 2.62 plus 28,000 already into the county, and may or may not be getting another 50,000. Okay. Transferring a second to, do you now see the
Yep.
CARES Act funding? Okay. So on this spreadsheet, I have, flip over here to start. Again, our original 2.26 million, the 28 we've received, and for planning purposes, the 54,000. That comes over onto this spreadsheet right here. Now, the top columns right here, we have allocated that 1.13 million to the business assistance, and then off the approval earlier, the additional 27,000, which includes the Crescent Township money and that additional $9,000. Okay, so these two fit in the spent category. The technology upgrades, technology upgrades. The board has authorized up to 254,000 for those upgrades. And as Andy gets that stuff ordered, we'll be able to see how close to that number we're at. The board has already authorized up to $50,000 for the drop site improvements, the facilities there. You've authorized up to $25,000 for the west entrance replacement, and we're expecting that to be more like 20. But we're waiting to see some final numbers and electrical costs and such. And you've also authorized up to $9,000 for the glass barriers order to put the glass windows and such in the building. That's what's been authorized and allocated so far. The rest of this is all adjustable still. We had originally had about 400,000 set aside for school district support, and I'll come back and explain the 457 where that number comes from. We've still set aside about 30,000 to cover the Hiawatha Valley, SEMCAC, and the other organizations that we provide annual appropriations to. SEMCAC's request comes in at just over 5,000, and or Hiawatha Valley, excuse me. Can't think of the total for SEMCAC off the top of my head. We're still working on quotes and getting answers back from commercial plumbers, but we've got an estimate of about $50,000 to go through primarily our restrooms in both buildings and convert things to hands-free sinks and toilets and such. But we have not committed that yet. We had allocated 50,000 for PPE and 20,000 for cleaning supplies. Right now, Carol's pulled the IFS reports, and we've actually got about 26,000 worth of actual expenses under those categories. We've got some wiggle room there still. We had allocated about 150,000 between payroll expenses and potential contact tracing costs. We've been pulling the spreadsheets on salaries for who that could be applied towards, and offsetting costs, and that's pretty a wide range number. So I think this will be kind of our floating category to spend whatever's left. We'll be able to put towards payroll. I had earmarked 40,000 for boardroom upgrade and replacement on the IT. We're still waiting on some quotes back on that. And then we talked about putting 50,000 towards the Armor radio purchase, which would provide us increased communications capabilities, and then ultimately also offset some of what we had planned for the 2021 budget. And so that puts us pretty close to that funding plan. Again, as some of these numbers firm up, we'll be able to lock that in a little tighter. So that takes us back to the school district discussion. And I'm going to switch back over here and I'll come back to this. So we've had multiple conversations with the school superintendents, and when you talk to them about what their needs are from that perspective, they have received CARES Act funding, 3 different rounds of it. And I won't go into all the technicalities with that, but a couple of the categories that they've received, you'll hear the words GEAR and ESSER funds. They have until 2022 to spend some of those money. And then they've also received a 3rd round, which was CARES Act money directly from the state that has to be spent like this CARES Act money by the end of the year. But in talking with them, when they look at their needs, all of the schools are short to some degree in the need for electronic devices for students to take and work from home, as they either do hybrid learning or purely remote learning. They've needed more technology equipment to support their paraprofessionals that work with students. They've needed PPE equipment over and again what's been provided thus far. All of them have had to hire extra teachers and extra substitutes and are struggling mightily to come up with enough extra substitutes to keep teachers in classrooms. They've had double the number of buses to use for activities, the limited activities they're able to do in order to provide the capacity limit, meet the capacity limitations. So increased transportation costs. One of the students has to hire an extra nurse. One of the La Crescent bought and is paying for a number of hotspots for students that didn't have wireless access at home. They've all had increased costs on software, buying Zoom licenses, buying camera licenses, all of the things they've had to do to support hybrid and school learning. And so their expenses far exceed what they've received through other sources. In the CARES Act guidance, but from the Treasury, there's a presumption limit of $500 per student that doesn't have to be documented as specific expenses the way we would on other expenses. So there's a presumption that up to $500 a student is going towards appropriate costs based on what they've calculated broadly costs for dealing with COVID-19 are. So far, what the schools have received works out to about $350, just under $350 per student. Each of the school districts' calculation is slightly different. So what I used for figuring sake to keep the number under that $500 per student cap was $150 per student. And so what you see on here right now up on the screen is each of our 4 main school districts, their student population count. Houston's does not include their distance learning program support. And then we also brought in the numbers from the private schools. The private schools are a bit of a different animal. Part of the money the school districts have received has been shared with the school districts. Part of the money can't be shared with the school district, with the private schools. So the private schools have received some, but not as much per student as the public schools have. So at $150 a student, that would, if the board wished to go that route, that would put $396,000 into the public schools and $60,000 into the private schools. And we could very easily, if the board wanted to do less than that per student for the private schools, public schools. Easy calculation at this point. Commissioner Burns, you were on the call with the superintendents on Friday. Anything you'd like to add from that conversation?
No, you covered what their needs and what their costs are and all the additional costs that they've incurred that they haven't gotten reimbursement for. One thing I will say, the numbers that you see for the student counts, that's K through 12. It does not include any daycare. It does not include the preschool kids. It's strictly K through 12 school district numbers.
Yeah.
One thing I would ask with regard to the private schools, some of those schools received the $5,000 from the grant, which I asked whether or not we should subtract that from the amount that we're showing.
Right. Yep. And let's see, St. Mary's received a grant and St. John's did. I think those are the two that did request and received.
Well, I guess I'll raise a question. Greg, Eric, you had posted a question earlier with regard to other expenditures. So if we go back to that list of the way the monies is broken down that Jeff showed us, where are you thinking we should change?
I'm sorry, Bob, what was that?
The question, you had posted earlier about other things besides the school that we had.
Well, yeah, but I was thinking about the SEMCAC and Historical Society and that figure there. So I just thought that if we only had $1.3 million left or $1.1 million, and that I was just doing calculations in my head, it didn't seem like we would have that much to give, but according to the way it looks here, it's possible.
So one question I've got with regard to the Ag Society, Houston County Fair, do they have, the restroom facilities and whatnot at the fairgrounds? I don't know if we've got time to do anything as far as that's concerned, but I know what the showers are like in there and what the restrooms are like at the fairgrounds. I mean,
well, they got a $5,000 grant too, or through the business grant, so
right.
they were on that list.
Bob,
Plus, we give them $24,000 regularly every year too. So,
but that's general operations. This is
right.
This is things that would make it less COVID. Reduce the liability as far as that's. I see the troughs and whatnot.
Yep.
What would be wrong with putting some money towards the fairgrounds for some updating on their bathrooms?
Nothing. That would be something to consider. Yep.
The big problem is spending it this year.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah, at our last AMC MACA discussion on CARES Act, AMC is actively, and NACO at the national level is actively pursuing an extension to the deadline to get all this money spent by the end of the year. I don't know that has traction or not, but there's folks that are trying and pushing for that. So, but right now we got a plan on getting it spent.
So
Did we give anything to EMS and our ambulance and services or fires?
That I would lump under this category here.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, we could increase that category.
Yeah.
Yes.
$30,000. We've got 3 ambulance services, 4 fire departments.
Now keep in mind, most of those most of the city funds have gone
Right.
directly into those ambulance and fire services. So I don't know. I haven't reached out and asked them what needs they still have above and beyond what they've spent, but they haven't come looking either. So,
So in this conference meeting, you had a conference call with all the soups from those schools, or?
yeah, just had a follow up with them to try and get an idea of what their needs were and where they were at.
And did you discuss those figures with them, that the dollar amounts, or?
Yeah. I was trying to. Superintendents and their business managers afterwards sent me a summary of what they have received thus far under the GEAR, ESSER, and CARES Act. At that per student level. So that the numbers of what they've received so far came from the schools.
And one of the things that came up or came forward was, is like Jeff said, the first $500 per student is not subject to audit. They get it, they spend it on their needs. They don't have to. It doesn't have to have an accounting. If you go over that, then you have to have an accounting for the money that you spent. So by staying at 150, it keeps them under the 500. We're out of the picture. They don't have to suffer an audit, but it's available for them to spend on their needs, be it new Chromebooks, be it hotspots, whatever.
Yep.
So keeping it below that at 150, unless we decide to go less, there's no audit, no trail necessary.
Would that be kind of the same for like EMS and the fire departments, if we gave a little that way? Would there be a trail there, or what? Anybody know anything about that?
No, everything to them would have to be documented and receipted and all of that. Yep. And it's not that the school doesn't have to meet an audit requirement. It just changes the level of documentation that they have to do. They can take the money and put it in where they've been already spending the stuff. Yep.
And we don't have to keep track of it.
Right.
Right.
I think there should be a clarification on St. John's. Their church received 5,000 and not their school.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was the technicality that business book wise, they don't separate the two. So they were quote unquote one business with their application. Yep.
How about, it's been brought up before and it doesn't seem to get any traction, but financing those steps on the west end of the courthouse with this CARES Act money.
Well, when we go back to the 3-question test on it, I don't see how we can make it past the test. We've budgeted for the stairs. It was a known expense prior to CARES Act. The tie into it being a directly attributed to pandemic response is pretty loose at best.
It's an entrance to the voting area, so. Jack, you had a question?
Well, Tess just told me the other day that we got the grant.
Yeah.
We have to match that grant?
How much was the grant for?
71.
What was it, Bob?
A little over 71,000
That's how much the grant was?
the grant was, and we would match it.
So we're gonna
I can't.
spend $150,000 on steps.
No, can't do that. Wow. I think if you listened on Monday, there was counties that were remodeling buildings and pouring cement under public safety. You can't tell me them steps on the east side of the building wouldn't go under public safety. They're cracked, they're dangerous. I don't understand it.
Okay.
What are you going to be out by
No,
not
we-
trying to get it? What are we
we
going to be
can't-
out?
We can't execute it by December 1st, though.
Well, no, I mean, we probably ain't gonna get it done, but let's see if we can get the money and maybe they'll give us more time.
What he's saying, Greg, is that we got to have it. We got to spend it and use it before we have to give it back. But I didn't know about getting the grant. That was news to me. I don't know how Jack
Yes.
found out, but
I knew about it. I saw an email on it. I do have a question with regard
there
to
was
this.
there was an email to this.
I don't know if it was an email or I saw it someplace. It had to be an email because I haven't been to talk to anybody. Here's a question I got for you guys as far as, the AMC board meeting the other day. And the counties gave all their reports and talked about all the good things and this and that and the COVID dollars. One of the counties said they had allocated 1.5 million, was 1.2 or 1.5 million dollars to 2021 for projects that they were going to do. Can they do that? Can we do that? Can we allocate something for later? I thought had to be this year.
No, it has. Right now, all the rules say it has to be this year. I think even trying to offset some things that we were planning to do next year is a stretch, but one we can make. Ultimately the downside is if at some point they come in and audit and they say, you know what, that was not a valid CARES Act expense, and they pull that money back, then it just means we spend it out of county money.
Well, how are these counties that are doing all this work, then they're not gonna get it all done by the end of the year, so how is that gonna work? They're gonna have to change the rules because there's a lot of work that people aren't gonna get done by the end of the year.
Well, what Bob just mentioned, the fact that they're pushing money forward.
Yeah.
Don't know if it's legit or if it's legal, but that's what they're going to do.
Well, if you recall which county it is, I don't recall which one said that. I'll call them up and ask how they're doing it, because we've had constant conversations with the other county administrators on what they're doing and how they're doing it, and I've certainly tried to copy justification and use that when we can.
Do you remember what the quote was on the steps?
Tess is on here. I don't know if she's
142.
acting and can jump in. Yep. Tess, are you able to answer? She may
Must
not
not be there.
be. Yeah, all right. Give me a second. I'm looking at an email.
Here's my opinion on this. This is just my thought. If we put if the steps cost 142 to 143,000 based on the 71,000 some odd dollar grant, if we put $72,000 of COVID money towards the steps and have it contracted, the worst that can happen is they say, "Oh, you can't do that," and then we got to pay $72,000 that we're going to pay as a matching grant anyway. Take the gray area side, and give it a shot.
I agree with Bob.
I think so. And there were two counties I heard putting money away for next year for payroll, for a couple things. They were planning ahead. I don't remember which two counties they were. We should have had notes on that one, but none.
But as a taxpayer, $150,000 steps, really? I mean, if that gets around the county, we're going to be run out of town. I don't care. That seems ridiculous to me. I know it's historically correct, and they're probably using the real stuff, but technically that courthouse building's been added onto. It's kind of lost its historical significance, but that's just my opinion. But the fact that it just that kind of money for steps is just, I have a hard time getting over that. But I agree with what Bob and Greg were saying, that you know, we could try it, and if we can get away with it, I suppose, you know, if it's okay that we can do that, then we're all right. But
And from the other perspective is we ignore the grant, send it back, find out how much it is to fix the steps and just do it.
I like that idea better.
Well, we have a quote for that, and it's not much cheaper for us in the end.
well, I'd like to see the requirements of that quote.
We need to get more than just one quote too.
But here's the thing. Let's say it's not much. Let's say it's $65,000. I don't know how much the quote is, Jeff. Set that much money aside for the steps out of the COVID money. Doesn't have to be 71. If it's 65, set aside 65. Sign a contract, make an advance payment out of the COVID monies, and get it when you can. We're committed to it. We used it. Let's take advantage of it.
Well, they gave it to us. I don't know why we want to give any of it back. That'd be a good idea to me.
I ain't giving any back.
But I think we should try to get the steps in there. I don't hurt to try.
Safety hazard.
Yep. That's public safety.
It's not whether we try to do it, it's whether we spend the money and then get told that, no, that doesn't qualify and we have to send it back. Because we have the money. It's just where we allocate it to.
Right.
Mhm.
But I listened to all those other counties the other day talking about the things they're doing and the things they're doing with their money. And it's like Greg said, they're doing all kinds of building things and whatnot.
Yeah, they are.
Do we have to make a motion or something to go for this, or is this something that we can just go on and do?
Well, the action item is for the school part right now. So we need to decide on the school CARES Act support.
I put this back up here, and so if I put that 70,000 down there on this under stairs, that puts us over by about 67, and we can adjust some of these other numbers as well. Again, I think this is more like 30,000 here, and that might still be high. And so
You made it 140 instead of 150. You're taking $30,000 off the school.
say that again, Bob.
If you made it $140 per student instead of 150, that's $30,470 that comes off the schools.
So what you're proposing there, Bob, is to be 417,000.
By using $140 a student instead of 150. And that's $30,000 off, plus we subtract from St. Mary's the $5,000 they got from the grant money.
Mhm.
So there's 35,000 of the 69,000. Plus we got the extra money coming from the townships that we don't know if we're getting or not. That was 58,000.
How about, oops, sorry. How about we change it to 125 a student for right now? That puts us at 380 on this chart. And then if we get to a point where there's still extra, we can always do a second,
And
Second
some of these other numbers aren't solid.
No, they're not.
Etched in stone. So we have some flexibility here. So
Yep.
Mhm.
Whether it be overtime payroll or whatever.
You know, like our solid waste people that are working at these drop sites are they getting a little extra money out of this, or, I mean, they should get something. Man, they worked through all this COVID and.
Well, they're getting paid.
I mean, couldn't they get a little raise or a bump on there or something? Man, that's like Quick Trip. They gave their employees $2 an hour.
Well, yeah, we. But I know for a fact that we can't use COVID money to give people raises. I don't think that's legal.
Not raises,
Correct.
but about bonuses or like.
Well, yeah, I don't think you can do that. But
Well, you were talking about payroll and stuff earlier here.
that's for COVID, direct COVID work related. So like for instance, like Allison, we hired her an extra day to take care of this grant program. So stuff like that.
67-day people that we hired for the door.
Right, and the driver's license and so on.
Yep. Again, costs have to be something that wasn't budgeted for in the budget prior to March, is directly related to COVID-19 pandemic response and activities.
So is well, first of all, let's make a decision on this school thing. What do you,
I think the idea of 125 per student would be more reasonable at this time and give us that flexibility, which would make it 380,000 for the school districts.
okay.
That a motion.
Teresa makes a motion for 125 per student. That's 380,000.
Thousand.
Is there a second? Is there a second to that motion? Greg, that was a second.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Any more discussion?
Only one thing, at 125, if we do have extra money that we haven't allocated or used prior to the deadline, we could increase that 125 to the 150.
We could do a second round.
Yeah, a second round. Right.
Yep. Okay.
Sounds good.
Any more discussion? If not, we'll proceed with roll call.
All right, District 1,
Yes.
District 2,
Yes.
District 3,
Yes.
District 4,
Yes.
and District 5.
Yes.
Passed.
All right.
Eric,
Yes.
but there was a mention of overtime, and Jeff, I'd be curious we've been racking up a lot of overtime.
I don't know off the top of my head. Carol,
There are certain areas which probably have seen more overtime than others. I can pull together a report to send out to the commissioners.
But
Yeah,
that's
I think-
part of what we're going to reimburse ourselves for, correct?
Well, the election overtime is basically covered by all of the different election grants that have been received.
Yep.
So we're not going to, I don't believe we'll have to use CARES money for that.
But public health, maybe?
Public health has to.
Public health and human services really are not, they do not accrue overtime. They make it work within their schedules. I think Audrey is the only one that has additional hours, and that's covered through the FEP and the SHIP grant, and some of it is applied to the COVID money that was received from the Department of Health.
Okay.
so we haven't, when we look at the payroll, the way the rules are is, and I'll use my position, for example. My salary was budgeted for the year. It's a budgeted expense. It's a known expense. What can be applied towards it is if we've had significant change in duties related to COVID-19 that were unexpected. And so the way, and there's been 4 rounds of clarifications in their questions and answers from the state and from the Treasury. And so what they've come up with is that positions like mine where duties have changed related to COVID-19, we can apply a formula and provide, apply 50% toward 50%, 75%, 100%, whatever we define as that appropriate formula. And so when we look at the positions like mine, Carol's, Donna's, Tessa's, Andy's, Aaron's, the sheriff, Olivia with EMS, and if we were to just apply 50% across the board for the 2 quarters, we'd be looking at $275,000 of CARES money that we could put towards that. And what that in effect would do is that money that we already had budgeted would then be freed up for other things or to carry over as fund balance to next year. So I can't take that money and apply it towards next year, but if we spent it this year, it would offset money that we could hang on to for next year.
50% might be a little high, but I'll bet you 25%.
Yeah, and when we look at,
could do this.
and we looked at it broadly, when coronavirus first kicked off, it was close to 100% of time occupied, and then it went down, and it's gone up and down for different people.
Mhm.
As so no, I wouldn't, not necessarily 50% across the board, but just using that number as a base figure to start. That's more than we've allocated for. So again, to make sure we're not sending anything back to the state, that's where we can apply more or less to use up any balances.
Okay, let's move on to action item number 3.
One last question.
Go ahead, Bob.
With regard to that salary, if we did an allocation of 25 or 30%, so it's like $140,000 or $150,000 that goes into the reserve to be carried forward to next year, we could use that to cut into the levy increase next year.
Yes.
Yep, it would be a fund balance applied to next year's budget.
That'd be a 1% cut in the levy then. Just using that $137,000 figure for a 1% cut in the levy.
Bingo.
I like that. Sorry,
Okay.
Eric, I apologize.
So changing gears. Brian
I'm
is
sitting here looking outside in the sunshine, and I'm thinking, man, this is killing me. But that's my job. Okay.
Sorry.
Here's what I'll do for you.
Moving on.
Here's what I'll do for you. Watch my screen.
All right, number 3.
Moving through, and Brian is on here, and I'll have him jump in. So, as the commissioners are aware, the city of Caledonia did approve our rezoning request. However, they held off on action on our conditional use permit on the advice of their lawyer, who suggested that they had a formal agreement put in place on the water main project before they approved our conditional use permit. We had been in discussions with the city and with our engineers on what the requirements for the water system would be. And, I think discussions were going along fine. We didn't have enough information to make final decisions. So we're just kind of over a barrel on formalizing something that we were in the process of working on and negotiating anyway. The last estimate from the city planners after they made some changes was about $150,000 for the water main project. And I'll ask Brian to go into the details, but we've gone back and forth with our folks on the need for the water main. What can we do without it? If we were to skip the water main project, would a tank work? Would a pump work, et cetera? And the latest recommendation from them is to still proceed with the water main to get us into the pressure. With the water main loop added in, we would not have to put in the same level of fire suppression equipment that we would not require the same level of pump. And we also discussed some additional changes within the building to what created the calculations for the requirements of the fire suppression system.
Yeah.
So
the tire storage is what kicked off the
Yep.
the code for having this amount of pressure, water pressure requirement. So if we don't store any more than a half a dozen tires in the shop, we don't have to have a pump. So at least that's what I gathered at their last meeting Monday. So,
right. And to put numbers to it, the pump is estimated at about $30,000 by the time you do a pump room and the equipment that goes around it and all that. The pump
50.
costs us about $50,000.
Mhm.
So if we don't spend it on a pump in a pump room, and we put that $50,000 towards the water main project, that gets us about half of that project covered. Half of our portion of that project covered. The city's looking at about a 30-60 split, or 40-30, yeah, 1/3, 2/3 split on the cost of that project,
Tentatively.
tentatively.
And what is the cost of the project?
Well, the estimates were 150 on to put it in the loop system. But that's just a estimate, nothing
Yeah.
solid.
And when I talked to Casey briefly on Monday, he hadn't received anything back from their engineers with a revised estimate yet, but they're hoping to get something back.
So Brian, do you have any more info?
I think you guys explain it pretty good. I did send a draft agreement to Jeff that I'm not sure if you forwarded on to the rest of the board members, based on previous agreements we've had between the county highway department, or between the county and the city of Caledonia, or basically multiple cities and counties had that same type of agreement. I put a number in there, but that number is going to be determined by the board as far as what percentage or how you want to do that split. I also included in that agreement that I don't know if we want to have it in there or not, that dealing with three-phase electric. City typically pays for the first 400 feet of running three-phase line, and then the developer pays the remainder. Don't know if we want to include it in this agreement or leave it out, because really right now the only condition that the city's kind of holding us up on the approvals are all in that water main. So do we want to muddy the water by putting that?
I think we should keep that separate.
I agree.
Yeah, so I kind of put it in there. That was kind of more the main reason why, just to think about it, so we can have the conversation and say, yep, keep it out or put it in. I'm okay with leaving it out. Otherwise, I think everything was talked about. One of the things that we talked about quite a bit is that looping of the water main and taking the tires out of the building, hopefully eliminate the pump. That is HSR's designers' preliminary analysis, as we can eliminate the pump. That's not the final. If we take the tires out and if we loop, we are guaranteed to not have the pump. That's just what they believed as of Monday.
I'm still trying to find a way to not have to do this loop. But if we took those tires out and we don't have to have those requirements of pressure, we still couldn't get away with just the tap off Washington,
No, they're saying we still need the pump.
even though the requirements would change because we're not storing tires.
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to understand that. The more I've been thinking about this, at first I was dead set against 2/3, 1/3, but after thinking about this some more and doing some research and asking some questions, we should probably consider that deal. If the city's willing to pay us at least 1/3 of the cost, we should probably take them up on that. Because we're going to have to, I think we're going to have to do this in order to get this thing going. And it's another 100,000, but it is what it is. Bob?
Not to extend my time here, but did you say that if we put in the loop and don't put the tires in there, we save $50,000 on pump costs? Is that what I understood?
Yeah, so we should be able to eliminate the pump, eliminate the room that the pump goes in, and all the wiring and everything that's in that room. We'd eliminate ongoing maintenance costs as well, which is not included in that 50,000. And then we'd also gain a little bit of usable space in the building. So
Right.
there's multiple benefits, but yeah, the immediate impact is about 50,000 in savings.
Because it will double our pressures.
But the net effect would be on the 1/3, 2/3, the city pays 50, we pay 100, but we're saving 50. So the net cost is $50,000 increase for the loop, right? Okay.
Okay.
Possibly.
Possibly, yep.
But we don't know we don't have a quote on the bid on the project either. And we're going to try to keep this under our umbrella as far as the project running of it too. So,
Yeah, so that's a couple other things in the agreement. One is that we'd design it out, we'd get it bid out and installed and inspected and stuff. The city would be responsible for all ongoing maintenance and ownership of that, including if they rip up the future pavement or gravel or anything, the city's responsible for patching it back in. So we'll pay for the initial stuff and try to get the city to do the rest.
yeah, because we're granting the easement. So,
But typically, if you put something over the top of an easement, you're responsible to replace it if it has to be tore up. So make sure the agreement says that the city will replace it if they tear it up. Because like out at the IGA, they paved over the easement, the city had to tear it up. It was IGA's responsibility to patch it because they had covered the easement. So make sure the verbiage is right in the agreement.
Yeah, so that's what's in there right now, which is what the agreements usually do when we have it underneath roadways. I do understand a lot of times when it's over in private property, if someone paves over it, it's that individual's responsibility. So that's something where, again, we can propose one way and see what the city says on Monday night and maybe.
so Jeff, did you forward that out to us? That
I hadn't even had a chance to look at it. Brian sent it Monday afternoon, and I will forward it right now so you can see it. But
so what is it? What is everybody's thoughts on this?
I agree with what you said, Eric.
I do too.
We have to get moving on the project, move forward. If it's a net $50,000 cost to put that water line in and we save that pump, the room, and add some space to the building.
Yep.
Plus we move in maintenance later on. So I think it's the way to go.
And we've exhausted all other options as trying to find ways around it. So,
I would agree too, but again, I want to reiterate what I've said earlier, that there's supposed to be a stormwater issue whereby the city would like to run stormwater down to our retention pond.
yeah, but they're not doing that now. It's going to go directly into. This outlet's going to stay the same, correct?
Yeah,
Brian?
so right now, yeah, we're going to put all of our highway site water into that pond. City's water is all going to bypass. So their lines are already going through. Our site's going to stay where they're at and not going to go into the pond.
So it doesn't impact the county property at all?
No.
Our line doesn't, and our project does benefit the landowner downstream a little bit. City itself really doesn't benefit a ton more of that landowner with the easement or with the ditch. But we're not going to work their pipes to add it into the pond.
Okay.
So I guess we have an agreement to move forward. Do we need to have a motion on this?
I think consent on this is fine for now.
That's what I was thinking too.
We'll set up another meeting with Casey and Adam over at the city and try and hammer out an agreement, and then bring that back to the board for approval. But if I've got the board's consent to set that up, we'll get that in place.
I think we got a thumbs up from all five, right? All right. Okay. All right. Number 4, we'll start the bid package here now that we postponed here last time.
Yeah, I just left our tabled items on here. I wasn't sure if we wanted action yet or if we still wanted to wait on the conditional use permit from the city approval,
Well,
which hopefully we'd have Monday.
maybe we should wait. What do you guys think?
I think so.
All right, we'll wait for next Tuesday.
Ryan, is that
Yep, I think that's going to be fine. They actually want to start work out there next Wednesday. So if we approve it on Thursday or Tuesday, they want to get in there the next day and start work. That does give our staff a couple more days time getting our stuff out of their way, so we're not on top of each other. So I don't think it's going to delay the project.
So what project are we doing, Brian?
Yeah,
Yes.
get the
Yep. So what they want to do is next, kind of start moving some stuff into the site on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Monday. Start demoing the existing rock shed. Right after that, starting to take out the soil correction on the main building. Probably surcharge where the hoop sheds are going to go with that material. Haul new material back into the building foundation area. Get all that stuff done by mid-January, and then start working on the main buildings, footings and walls in February. Goal is to have the roof on the building by April 21st.
So if they're working on the concrete footings and whatnot in after January and February and stuff, do they enclose all that and heat it?
Yeah, so they'll need to enclose, heat everything for the footings. Everything with concrete work will need to be thawed out and stuff. And that's actually the next thing after the roof is put on. They have a week and they're pulling frost from within the building. So that way, actually, they have a week and a half to do that. So they figured that once the building's enclosed, they'll need to heat that, so that way they can get work on the floor there. So
So have you arranged a time frame to get your rock out of that shed then, or?
yeah, so I talked to Pat. First off, I said let's wait till after today's meeting, see what the board wanted to do as far as moving ahead. So looks like we're moving ahead. One of the things I was checking out a little bit here is where to put our rock. We want to make sure it's at a spot that we can get to. That's not going to be need to move twice. We can't get to. So we're working that. We might start pulling rock late this week. Otherwise, Monday we'll start getting that rock out of there. Shouldn't take us long, day and a half to get the rock out.
Where you plan on putting the rock? On the fairgrounds?
No.
Well,
What's your address, Bob?
I'd rent, I don't care.
the spot that we're thinking might be the best spot for us actually is right on the east side of our building where they usually pile snow in the winter. That area is on the county land. That area is going to be disturbed anyway with our projects. That'll be a good location for us to put that rock where we can get at it all winter. But then we figure out what to do with the snow. So
a whole big field to throw the snow? So
yeah. I mean, we have a 3-acre field throw the snow on if we need to. So
okay.
All right. Number 5.
5 was tabled from last week because we didn't have a signed agreement back from Mr. Berg, who's going to be leasing the land. I got it yesterday, and didn't get a chance to scan it and send it out. So if you'd like to table it till next week, we can. Otherwise, if you want to approve it, it's the standard lease agreement, signed and ready, and I can just flip through the conditions on it if you'd like.
We can table this till next Tuesday. That shouldn't be a problem, should it be, Brian?
Nope.
Yeah, let's just table it. Yeah, that way you can everybody can chance to look it over.
Yep, I'll put that in the package to read for next week then. Perfect.
All right.
Okay, and we crossed out 6, so that takes us down to some discussion items.
Yep.
Very quickly, while Brian's still on here, the Arlen Falk Foundation did grant the request that was submitted on behalf of the airport projects that we had planned for next year. So 23,175 in for that, and so that's money that we had budgeted to cover some of those. So that'll come off the 2021 budget project to offset those costs. So
Yeah, not fully, but a lot
not
of
fully.
it. There's some change with the CARES Act funding that we'll talk about with the Airport Commission tomorrow.
Yep.
But that was something that was budgeted. We'll have some proposed changes there for the airport funding needs.
It stays as a budgeted item. It just now will have a revenue to offset it.
Yeah, so we have a revenue, but we have different revenues that are going to decrease and change due to Midnight Aeronautics using CARES Act money first, always, instead of using our maintenance and operation money coming from the state, and then using CARES Act to offset. They're using 100% CARES Act money first. So there's some adjustments we're going to make and figure out how that really affects us. So.
State's playing a little bit of shell games with that money to benefit them. Let's see. Second thing I put in the board package, Attorney Yount provided a letter addressing the ethics and responsibility for the boards, just as a final follow-up to the actions occurred earlier with the board. So I'll send that in there for you. And then you've seen some of the emails, but hats off to Donna and her team and all of the election workers. Yesterday's election events were as close to flawless as they could across all of the precincts and counties. The only glitch we had was waiting for the tape to spit out of the DS200 on the absentee voting, so we could get that loaded into the computer and then finish loading in all the precinct results. And so a lot of time spent staring at the thing as it printed out the results ever so slowly, waiting to get the rest loaded. But everything else went really smoothly. 92% voter turnout of registered voters. So incredible numbers of everything that went through. And so well done to them.
Yeah, and I'm sure they're glad it's almost over.
Piles of ballots and ballot equipment and all that stuff. They're working real hard to get all that stuff cleaned up and organized and put away. So
no, they've been really busy and working hard at this for a long time, and it's appreciative for what they did. So
yeah, and I'm going to be seeing dots in my sleep for a week, I think, after looking at all those ballots.
It was amazing. I did work the La Crescent Township one, and when we opened at 7, we had people lined up and all the way up to the street and around the corner. So we had a wonderful turnout in just the township.
Yep.
587, I think, something like that. And we only, that was not counting. That's just the in-person voting.
Right.
Yep. Absentee besides.
Yep.
And that's the way it was here at the courthouse too. And that's with all the people that were just in the mail-in ballot precincts that came in and voted live yesterday.
Do you know what the percentage of early voting there was? About
just shy of 50%. I'd probably put it between 40 and 45% voted absentee or early.
So next Monday is canvassing.
On the 12th.
12th.
Yep.
Okay.
Which is Thursday.
Thursday. Okay. And is that done by Zoom?
Yes, we've set that up on Zoom.
Okay.
We will be, Donna is going to work out of the boardroom, so if people wanted to come in live, we have that option as well.
All right.
But we've got the Zoom invite sent out. I forwarded that invite to yourself and Commissioner Walter as the.
Yeah, I didn't look at it because.
So we don't have to. It's not okay. I don't have to be there. Never mind.
No, you can't.
Two commissioners not on the ballot. So.
Anything else, Jeff?
I think that's what I got for everybody. We'll clean up my desk for the stuff that came in while I was focused on helping with elections and push anything else out to you.
Okay.
I will follow up with Tess on the stairs project, and I will reach out to the counties, other counties that are doing projects like that, and get a copy of their justification and see if that passes our sniff and giggle test.
Yeah, and if you could send some details on that grant that was accepted or approved.
And the proposed for how much the bid was.
Yep.
All the stuff.
Yep.
Also, on next week's agenda, are we going to, we have to do an action on our public hearing from last week too.
Yes. Yep. That's on for next week to address the fees and such. Yep.
Jeff?
Yep.
Yeah, in terms of that, checking on the grant, is it absolutely for youth on the steps only?
The grant from the Historical Society, yes. But I'll clarify that, but yes.
Okay.
Anybody have any other reports? Commissioner reports? Bob?
Had the collaborative meeting with the schools and whatnot discussing financing, and this is basically an assistance with the mental health. Their funding receipts are down so that they're not going to spend near the money that they've spent in the past for this year, and trying to let their reserve build back up again. At the school meeting with Jeff, we've already talked about that. I enjoyed the AMC meeting, listening to everybody brag about what was going on. I want to just say thank you, Jeff, for taking care of that, because I wasn't ready for it.
That was a very good report, Jeff, for our.
And I apologize I couldn't make it because I just got back from Colorado. So I made the tail end, though. I did catch in on the tail end of it.
Okay, I presumed you were still on the road. So.
I had an ED or a Hiawatha Valley annual meeting Monday night, followed by the regular November meeting, which followed the AMC meeting earlier in the day, which was followed by the highway meeting.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of stock in Zoom, I hope. But anyway, Hiawatha Valley's had a very good year considering everything, the move, the new location in Caledonia. Obviously, the pandemic has caused all kinds of changes, necessary changes, but yet the books are looking good, and they're just moving forward in a real positive way. So it was a good meeting.
Good.
In our packet, there's this service agreement between Winona and Houston County.
Yeah, that's the one up on the consent agenda. No change in fees to what was before. So.
Yeah, the reason I wanted to discuss it a little bit is this is just another one-year contract, correct?
Yep.
I think we need to keep in mind Winona County's moving forward on building a jail.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually we're not going to have this contract and we're going to lose that revenue. So we need to seriously think about what we're going to do to replace that or adjust our budget for that. We should probably sit down and have a discussion with the sheriff on that. And what I'd like to see is try to convince Winona County not to do it and still do business with us, but that's going to probably be impossible. But
we tried that a couple 2-3 years ago, Eric, with no success. The thing I would say, and Marcia mentioned this, was they were requesting from the state the ability to deal with juveniles. If that were approved, I would like to see some kind of Houston has the juveniles, Winona has the adult, or vice versa. Wabasha sends their juveniles to, some kind of a collaboration, because this
Right.
got
right.
silly. Everybody's spending all this money.
Yeah.
Called me last week too, and she's one of the two commissioners that don't want to have a jail built for 28 to 30,000, not counting the cost of the land.
Yeah. 28 million.
Million, I mean. Anyway, she was saying that maybe they could put in a tunnel from Winona to Houston County.
Well, it would make more sense to me to build something. If Winona was going to build something, to go to the juvenile route, to fill that need, and we could still be housing some of their inmates for the other portion. So
Absolutely.
that would make more sense, more common sense for everybody. And I know, like Marcia said, they requested that funding, but instead they got money to buy land to build a jail. So that was supposed to only cost $1, but it's going to end up costing them.
Yeah. That agreement disappeared.
Yeah.
Right.
Bob.
The thing of it is, if they did something with juvenile, they'd have Wabasha, they'd have Fillmore, they'd have Houston, plus themselves. So, I mean, it would be a regional facility.
Yeah.
We can participate in that. That's going to defer the cost of operations for them. And then they send their, prisoners back. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense if we could convince them to do that. But
Well, and then maybe we should send a letter or contact the other commissioners from Winona County and somebody at the state to just get this thought into some people's heads about, let's really think about this.
'cause the juvenile deal is a big thing.
Yeah.
I know other counties don't like to have other counties tell them what to do. I understand that. But this is for the good of a whole region here. So
And maybe
if we can,
if the 4 or 5 counties that we're talking about are all in collaboration, we can talk to our senators, our representatives, and
Right.
we can get something done with it because of the effect and the benefit to the southeast Minnesota.
yep, exactly right, Bob. But I just wanted to, that was my little discussion.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, anything else?
Not from me.
I hate to call it short here, but
Yeah, I bet you do.
Got the combine running, ain't you?
yeah, it's sitting down here idling, right now. So, okay. Any closing public comment from anybody? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
I'll second that. Any more
You
discussion?
need to vote if we all
If-
seconded.
Meeting adjourned.
Sure.